My name is Manfred Lachs, and I'm here along with my colleague Samuel Lara for the state of religion. Now, for the following 14 minutes, I will be addressing the first two issues of the report today, and my colleague will address the final two issues. And we will leave 2 minutes for rebuttal. Now, the first part that we will be addressing is that our Gilliam has not complied with international law, and that our Gilliam is not liable for the use of Power 3. Now, collision is bound by many international instruments, such as the UN Charter, the Outer Space Treaty, and other general international law. In the Article 1 of the Outer Space Treaty, what it does is demand for the free use of outer space. Now, our Gilliam has not acted in accordance to this principle, because the results of the use of Power 3 has been results of destruction. And in this case, if they had respected this principle, they would have not deprived the state from the free use of their activities. Article 3 of the Outer Space Treaty establishes and demands that there's a peaceful use of the moon and other celestial bodies. Now, in this case, the use of Power 3 was violent because it was a use of a laser beam, but not only just a laser beam, but a laser beam that resulted in the destruction of a Pacific satellite from a state that was not involved in any kind of conflict and ended up destroyed. Now, Article 9 of the Outer Space Treaty demands due regard. Now, Your Excellencies, the UN General Assembly, in one of its resolutions, treats due regard as a way of conducting space activities as a way for the state of conducting space activities with due regard to other states' interests. Now, in this case, our Gilliam acted in a way that the operation was weapon-like. And what could we say is a weapon?
Agent, can you please tell me if this action with the laser beam amounted to an armed attack?
An armed attack?
Yes.
Yes, it did.
So it was a part of the armed conflict? Are we dealing here with war?
We are dealing with armed conflict because an armed conflict, when we define it, is whenever states resort to armed forces between the states. And armed forces, what are they? Navy, Army, Space Force, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marine Force. So
we have a question.
That's the question.
Yes.
What do you think about aggression?
Aggression. Aggression happens when there is absolutely no reason for a state to act against another state. And in this case, we have an act of aggression.
Laser beam is an aggression? The use of laser beam is an aggression?
The destruction of a satellite that was not doing anything is an act of aggression. Now,
Was the satellite destroyed?
yes, the satellite was completely destroyed.
I think in fact there's something else. It doesn't say destruction. Well, please continue.
Thank you. So we're saying it acted as a weapon because a weapon, I have a definition here that says something used, intended, or designed for employment into or from outer space to cause injury or damage to the enemy during an armed conflict. Now, the use. Here, this case translates to a use, an employment of destruction. So it also, so argument does not act with due regard because it's not acting in the interest of other states. It's acting for its sole purpose of its own interest. Secondly, and this relates with your questions, Argentine violated international humanitarian law, because international humanitarian law applies when there's an armed conflict and there's a violation of human rights. The following minutes I will say what human right was and why there was an armed conflict. An armed conflict, as I said before, is when states resort to armed forces, and we know what the armed forces are. And also we have to recall that the statement agreement of facts, what happened was that the foreign minister, at the time that Power 3 was employed, he said that Power 3 would contribute to the state's defense. So this proves that Power 3 was part of Argentine state defense, and therefore there is an armed conflict. Now, what was a human right? Here we have to talk about the human right of freedom of opinion and expression, which relates to the right of communication. In this case, what happened was that Argentine, through the use of Power 3, destroyed a satellite that had the purpose to provide communication services to the region and its citizens. And in this case, I'm going to quote Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everybody has the right to freedom of opinion and expression, including the right to seek through any media and regardless of frontiers. In this case, what happened was that there was a restriction, a limitation, and also there was a denial of a whole population of this right. Now, however, if the court decides that there is not an armed conflict, we still have a matter here of human rights. So Argentine would have not complied with human rights law.
Agent, can you please tell me, is telecommunication a space activity? When it's only for this transmission of communications to telephone, television, is this a space activity? According to the space law?
If it's coming from a space object, it is, because it involves the launching, it involves responsibility.
So when you are using your telephone, your mobile telephone, are you doing a space activity?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thank you.
So you have a
I have another question. Collision launch direct anti-satellite attack missile, right? In order to distort Power 2, right? Is this, like I asked the other group, isn't it self-justice taken in hand? Don't you think so?
no.
One self-justice in hand.
It's not self-justice because international law is not.
Without preventing any proceedings that might establish charter, UN charter and liability convention, like I mentioned before, articles 15 and 17 with the claims commission. Isn't it for you to omit such proceedings legally?
No, because it's a justice by its own means, and that is against international law.
You make justice yourself.
Yeah.
You decide because you have an action that some other legal instrument allows you to do that, right? Which ones?
It's as a state, we're saying that you're not meant to make justice by your own hands. That's why international law exists. And justice is a formal way of respecting agreements between states, and not just agreements between two states, multilateral agreements, world agreements, and space agreements. And now, and it comes to the last point, Argument also violated the UN Charter and the prohibition to use force. In this case, there is ways that a state can use force with an authorization from the UN Security Council, or if it's acting in self-defense. Well, in this case, none of the latter will happen, because Collegium was a Pacific state that was not involved in any kind of conflict.
You mean self-defense? Because of the self-defense?
There wasn't self-defense in the destruction of Iriday. Now,
you got my point? You understand my point? Self-defense and...
I think this is going to be discussed by your agent.
yes, I'm speaking
Okay,
about
I'm sorry.
Iriday.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, and thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt. Just
It does not.
spontaneously, but my mind can
No, it's mine.
ask me to do that.
Thank you. Well, and now arguments acts do constitute international responsibility over Irid 8. This is under space law because of the Convention of Liability and also the Outer Space Treaty. The Outer Space Treaty establishes that each space party who launches or procures the launching of an object into outer space is internationally liable. We said before, there's a previous responsibility. And also, Article 3 of the Liability Convention requires 3 elements for there to be responsibility in outer space: a space object, a launching state, and also damage. In this case, we do have a space object, and we have Public 3 who's registered in both registries, the national one and the UN one. We also have a state, launching state, because it's also in the registry of Argument and the UN. And the damage is absolutely undisputed if we see the sequence of events, which is a laser beam to Iridate and resulting in the throwing out of orbit of Iridate and the destruction. Now, another way to prove liability, is under Article 7 of the Outer Space Treaty that requires this causal link between the damage and also the launching state. In this case, it also happens because we know that Power 3's state defense on April 10 of 2031 orders the emit of a laser beam, completely failing and bypassing and causing the destruction of Earth.
Yes, the Outer Space Treaty Liability Article 7, this is Lex Generalis, and what are we going to apply here? The Liability Convention or the Outer Space Treaty?
The outer
Liability.
We're gonna
Because the Liability Convention is Lex Specialis,
Lex
which has prominence.
Special,
Okay, thank you.
especially because they're both parties to the outer space treaty. Now, Your Honour's Argument's use of Power 3 was against international law, and Argument is liable for the destruction of Iridate. And as a launching state, Argument assumed the responsibility of any kind of damage, and that's what we're looking at today. There was a damage, and there was a previous responsibility from Argument, and that's why there's a need for compensation for the state of Collegium. Now I'm going to give the word to my colleague, Samuel. Thank you very much for listening and for your interest.
Maybe it's a reflection. Under your arguments, the satellite communication produces damages for the states and for the sovereignty specifically. The justification for destroy all the position in space maybe is a terrible problem. What is your opinion specifically in this, in my opinion, terrible possibility?
Beg your pardon, in which?
The justification for destroy the space positions include satellites, include orbital stations, because your argument is reduce damages for the communication, for example. So, what is your position?
Our position here is to remember that nobody owns outer space, but the space objects they do. So in this case, if there's any damage to a state, which can have multiple consequences in Earth, we have to address them, and there has to be responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I invite the second agent from the respondent.
Thank you, Board Member, Mr. President, Your Excellencies. As you already know, my name is Samuel Lara. For the following 30 minutes, I will be addressing the final two issues of the respondent presentation, which are whether colonial actions are not contrary to international law, and secondly, that Korea is not liable for the destruction of Palmer II. The first issue regarding the use of the ASAT is not contrary to international law, and in that line, as first argument, our representative did not act against international law when they used the ASAT missing to lawfully defend itself from an imminent collision with Palmer II. This situation was taken under the legal backing of the Articles on Responsibility of States for International Conference, or ARCIWA, and our space treaty. First, regarding ARCIWA, Korean actions do not constitute an international wrongful act, as there was no breach of an international obligation, as the use of ASAT missiles are not forbidden. Right? Your Excellencies, as you well may know, Article 2 of ARCIWA establishes that there are two conditions for a situation to be considered as an international wrongful act. First, the action or omission of a state, and second, that is attributable to a state, and that action or omission constitutes a breach of an international obligation. At this respect, in the present case, there is no doubt that the action which consists of the launch of the ASAT missile is an action that is attributable to Korea. However, this action does not constitute a breach of an international obligation, as the ASAT missiles are not forbidden mainly by space law. More particularly, our space treaty has no prohibition of use of weapons in our space, except for Article 4 that establishes, and I quote, that state parties to the treaty undertake not place in orbit around the Earth any objects carrying nuclear weapons or any other kinds of weapons of mass destruction. Therefore, our space treaty only prohibits a certain kind of weapons in outer space. First, nuclear weapons that were defined by this court on its advisory opinion in 1996 regarding the legality of threat or use of nuclear weapons as explosive devices whose energy results from the fusion or fission of the atom. Secondly, we have the weapons of mass destruction that are not defined by international law or space law. However, in the context of our space, a weapon of mass destruction is any weapon that, if is used in space, would cause widespread harm to Earth. As these are the weapons.
Laser beam is a military weapon? Laser beam for you?
For me, it's not a laser. It is not a military weapon, mainly because its primary function is communication, right? However, they can be used as a space weapon because they have the ability to cause damage. It's like, I have a knife, but the knife is used to cut meat, but we can use it as a weapon.
Collisions anti-satellite hit Palmer II. It's a military weapon?
I would say that it was. However, I'm going to get to this part further. The action could be precluded by a state of necessity. Despite the fact that it is a military weapon, its use can be precluded wrongly. As I was saying, as these are the weapons forbidden by space law, it's now the of where the use and its ability to cause damage. On this line, there are two types of ASAT. Ones that use the kinetic energy to physically crash into satellites, and the others that use non-physical attacks, such as cyber attack. In the present case, the ASAT missile was used for a purpose that is different from the one that the nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction have. Moreover, the ASAT missile.
Excuse me. If you consider this laser beam as a cyber activity?
No, I wouldn't consider that like that, mainly because I assume that the laser beam is fire, so physically it is fire. Cyber attack is not physical.
So it didn't carry software or something like that. It was really
It's functioning.
it was electromagnetic harmful interference.
In the state of the fact that's not pretty clear, but it could be a way to interfere with communications or its main functioning for commands. Anything, it requires some cyber commands, right? But for the use of the laser beam, it is physical. So, as I was saying, moreover, the ACT missile was developed to cause damage to a specific object, the satellites. Therefore, the ACT that Korean used and developed was not consistent on a nuclear weapon or a weapon of mass destruction, and accordingly, they are not forbidden by the report of the Army Space Treaty. Additionally, along history, the ACT missiles were used and in fact, we motivated the UN to approve the space investigation guidelines that even if we make a precise interpretation on guideline 4, we could use ACT missiles because, as is stated, and I quote, when international breaks up of any on-orbit spacecraft or launch vehicle orbital stages are necessary, they should be conducted at sufficiently low altitude to limit the orbital lifetime of resulting fragments. This provision allows the states to cause space risk, and a way to do it is through ASAT missiles. So we can easily say or interpret that we can use ASAT missiles to destroy a satellite, as long as there are some requirements that are fulfilled that were recently accomplished by Korea because however, if this court considers that the use of ASAT missile is an international lawful act, the actions of Korea will be precluded under Article 25 of RCWA that establishes the state of necessity that, again, it prescribes that the wrongfulness of an action will be precluded if the act is the only way for a state to safeguard an essential interest from a grave and imminent threat. Those are the two key concepts. Essential interest, that is not defined. However, in the commentaries of RCWA, it is established that it will depend on the circumstances and cannot be prejudged. So, circumstances are going to define if a situation consists of an essential interest.
So, ASIWA allows collision to cause damage?
I would say yes. Not precisely with evil intentions, per se, in some way, but I would say yes, but it would be for exonerate the liability that they would have for reparation. It's not like we can cause damage whenever we want, only in certain circumstances that are described in ASIWA, such as self-defense, countermeasures.
Suppose our Chileans conduct, illegal conduct, let's call it that way, based on ASIWA, is the justification for not use the proceedings of Article 15 and 17 of Liability Convention?
The liability convention for the human charter.
Liability convention.
Liability Convention, Articles 15 and 17, establish the proceedings for the Crime Commission. See? Not to use these proceedings?
I would say no. It's just a circumstance.
Even though Article 51 of UN Charter, the end of the article says previous consultation to the UN, right? So that exempt of liability to
One of the UN Charter is about self-defense, and I'm trying to sustain here that there was a state of necessity. It's different from self-defense. Following your excellencies, Korean is a state that has a grand history of space exploration.
Decision nowadays, I don't know. We need investigation. What is the authority to make the investigation?
Well, I can remember exactly right now, but I would say,
Not exactly.
what authority could be.
What is they? What organization?
I will say that it might be
Because the legal consequence
can you try to
depend the investigation.
Exactly. I'm sorry, Your Excellency, I don't have the answer. Let's see. So, as I was stating, a state has a grand history of space exploration. Korea has a grand established history of space exploration and exploitation. Therefore, the satellites are main asset for Korea's economy. The second key concept here, Your Excellencies, is the concept of hidden peril. The existence of a peril is established, or the problem relies on the fact that it needs to be imminent. And this court in the Garcia and Guimaraes case has pronounced before about the concept of imminence, stating that it must be interpreted as immediacy or proceed. Therefore, the Palmer drift represented an imminent peril for Korea and several other states, as there were 150 functioning satellites that were going to be collided with Palmer 2 satellite, including 5 registered to Korea. Before, the space servicing vehicle was really complete or prepared to repulse Palmer 2.
I have a question for you. Another one. It is by allusion. Spy activities is very clear is being established in the memorial. Collision there is a very strong principle in law. Before acting, collision should use the burden of the proof to actually base their actions in destroying Albert II.
Regarding the case or consideration, Albert II was less than 24 hours to collide with the 5 racer satellites of Korea, so there was no time for such activities that you said. I would say that no. Finally, Your Excellencies, I would like to address the final questions on the respondent's submission, which is whether Korea is not liable for the destruction of Albert II, as the use of ACT does not constitute the international act for one reason, that space law is not applicable. Article in this respect, Korean is not liable under Article 3 of the Outer Space Treaty. That establishes, and I quote that, in the event of damage to a space object of one launching state by a space object of another launching state, the latter shall be liable only if the damage is due to his fault. The argument question requires that a space subject is of a state cause damage to another space object of another state. Therefore, the question would be if the ASCT missile is or not an a space subject. And the answer is no, mainly for one reason, as there is no legal definition or a precise definition of space object. However, several interpretations or distinctions are made, such as the one that Professor Bing Chen made regarding the registration convention that uses that in its preamble uses the expression of space objects launched into outer space. This, Your Excellencies, allows to state that objects launched to outer space are not necessarily space objects. Of space object launched into outer Earth orbit or beyond. Therefore, the framework to determine if an object is a space object is the fact that the object is launched into outer Earth orbit or beyond. This leaves out the possibility to declare that state the ACT mission is a space subject, as the ACT missions are weapons that are not destined to be in orbit around the Earth or beyond the orbit around the Earth. They just have the purpose to destroy or interfere with the desired.
Thank you very much. If you would like 2 extra minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now I invite the agent for the applicant to present their Please, can you state how many points are you going to report?
Of course, I'm going to report 3 points. First of all, Collegian's argument is that there is an armed conflict. There is not an armed conflict because we are in a court trying to solve the problem in a peaceful manner. Second of all, Collegian says that Argelian acted with fault, but let's clear. The damage was provoked because of the information that Charlotte King provided to Argelian. The information and the usage of the information Charlotte King is a reliable company with a reputation of providing data to a large number of states, and it is based on Collegian. Collegian is a country, and in a previous statement of facts, is a state that encourages the growth of its private activities in the outer space. Hence, Collegian had the obligation to check out what Charlotte King was providing to Argelian. The data was the one that provoked the damage, and an electronic damage that lead to the destruction of RFA, not the laser beam. The laser beam was only going to dazzle and blind. It was never intended to destroy any satellite. Again, the state of Collegian argues that there is a state of necessity. And in their own definition, a state of necessity means an imminent peril. There is not imminent peril. They mentioned that the satellite was going to destroy in less than 24 hours. That is not true. In the Agreed Statement of Facts, paragraph 3 establishes that there was only going to be a 3% of an activation of the satellite. That is not an imminent peril. And Argelian was doing actions in order to prevent that the satellite was going to destroy this constellation of satellites. In order there is not an imminent peril, and the state is already by invoking. Can I finish?
Just wrap.
Okay. By invoking a state of necessity, Collegian is already establishing that there is a wrongful act, and they're trying to justify it. But it can be because there is not an imminent peril. Thank you, Your Excellencies.
So I invite now the agent from the respondent to give answer to these 3 submissions. Please, please.
The applicant stated, therefore, that Argelian contracted with a responsible company. However, there is precedent in the statement of fact that it was not a responsible company. It had other occasions of providing this unreliable information and data. Argelian assumed the responsibility to compensate damages in the case their space object caused any damages. And in this case, they did not prove that the ASAP missile is a space object. And the imminence is for the Commission, not the laser. Now, Argelian did not also prove that powder 3 was used for peaceful reasons. In fact, they talked about the satellite they're being used for communicational issues and environmental issues. However, we're here today because of matters of destruction and violence. So thank you.
So now we are the judges. What do you think?